given him to perform.
We're in chapter
12.
Mm-hmm.
13.
13.
And the dragon saw that he was thrown down to the earth. He persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child. And the 2 wings of the great eagle were given to the woman in order that she might fly into the wilderness to her place, where she was nourished for a time and half a time from the presence of the serpent. And the serpent poured water like a river out of his mouth after the woman, so that he might cause her to be swept away with the flood. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and drank up the river which the dragon poured out of his mouth. And the dragon was enraged with the woman and went off to make war with the rest of her offspring, who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus.
Amen. Okay, so we pretty much finished everything up last week. You guys remember verses 10 and 11, that great proclamation in heaven, that now has come salvation and honor and glory. What was that? What was that all about? What happened at that point in time? Sometime after 1798, sometime after 1844, what was supposed to take place according to the Bible?
Judgment.
Judgment. And as that judgment takes place in heaven, on earth, what are God's people apparently at one point are going to do? What are they going to obtain?
Victory over sin.
That's right, victory over sin. And as soon as this is realized in heaven, heaven realizes, look, all the final events can now take place. They start glorifying the Lord. And this is where we talk about how these are the 144,000 overcome. Satan realizes that, look, I have failed in preventing mankind as a body from achieving victory over sin. So he knows that he has but a short time, exactly. So that's what we studied last week, that that's when persecution breaks out. It's really just a reference to those 1,260 days at the end of time, that 3.5 years, that second stage of dominion of the little horn power, right? And Satan's purpose is, what does he want to do? What does he go out to do?
Deceive as many as possible.
Right, not just deceive, but also
Kill.
Right, to destroy. Remember, we coupled this with Daniel 11:45, or Daniel, was it 11:42, and where it talks about when the king of the north hears these tidings from Jerusalem, that he goes out with great fury and wrath to utterly destroy and make away men. Why does he do this?
Time is short.
Time is short.
And he's angry.
He is angry. Okay, what else?
And he wants as many people taken down with him as possible.
Right, but he knows also that something is about to happen that's going to decide this entire conflict, that's going to break, finish him off completely. Because he's been trying to keep us in sin. At one point in time, he realizes
people have finally risen up and gained victory over sin, and he realizes that.
Right, so now that they have victory, what happens to their characters?
Transfer their
Right, they are sealed, they're 100% transformed into the character of Christ. They become the beings of love. Satan realizes this. Now that their characters are transformed, what they are now able to go through or experience or be tested on. What kind of a time do they have to go through after? Yeah, the time of trouble, the time of Jacob's trouble. When the Holy Spirit's withdrawn, there is no mediator. He understands that this is the last, that final bit of drama in this great war. Look, they have victory now. They're about to go through the time of trouble. If they show the universe that, look, you can be righteous, you can be changed and transformed 100% and 100% depart from sin.
I'm done.
Yeah, if they go through this, I'm done. The only way for me to win now is if there is no people to go through that time. So his purpose in his self-deceived mind is to destroy everybody, including the 144,000. Even though he knows that, can he deceive the 144,000 in any way? No, not at this point at least. So we know that he sends a flood. What is the flood? He sends a flood after the woman to take her away and drown her. What do we call that? Peer
Persecution.
Peer pressure that leads to persecution, right? That's really what this is. With the flood, we know the waters represent people, multitudes, tongues, and nations, etc. So what it's really a reference to is what we saw in the Dark Ages, except multiplied many times over, where he influences the minds of the people, the common people, and the religious people. Then what do? They influence
the state.
Right. And the state executes the action. All through the people. Satan doesn't just show up, of course, and says, I'm the devil, worshiping. He has to use the people. And that's kind of where we left off. That after all this persecution that we studied in Revelation 11, the 1,260 days, day 1335, probation closes. Everyone has made their decision. Now we get to verse 17. That's really where we're at. Can someone read that verse again, please?
And the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ.
Okay. Now, where's the woman at this point? We mentioned last meeting. Is the woman mentioned anywhere else in verse 17? She's not there, right? Why?
She's
Hiding.
No?
Remember, she's gone. Remember, the purpose of Satan over here in verse 15, he's seeking to send the flood, and even though the earth helps the woman disappears from the scene by the time we get to verse 17. That's what we mentioned. It represents the martyrs. The only ones alive at this point are the remaining ones, the remnant, the 144,000, which we know is just a small company to the rest of the world. So we have two characteristics, right? They keep the commandments. What does that mean?
Departed from sin.
Right, they departed from sin, and because they are transformed, they have a natural desire to do what?
Keep the commandments.
Right, to live in harmony with all of God's commands, with all of his principles, all of his laws, all of his statutes, all of his truth. That's really what it comes down to. But let's try to generalize. What is keeping the commandments? Because I just want to remind us of a few points when we bring this up to other people. What does it mean generally to keep the commandments? If you were to generalize it as much as possible.
Obedience.
It is obedience. What is obedience in relation to God? Following. Okay, if you're following him and you're being obedient, if you're doing it out of your
Love.
It's love, right? Let's go to Romans 13. Romans 13 verses 8 through 10.
Romans what?
13.
Owe no man anything, but to love one another. For he that loveth another hath fulfilled the law. For this, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not covet. And if there be any other commandment, it is briefly comprehended in this saying, namely, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Love worketh no ill to his neighbor, therefore love is the fulfilling of the law.
Amen. Right? That's what it comes down to. To keep the commandments out of a loving heart because you want to do good. You want to be like Christ. You want to help your fellow man. You're not doing this to be saved, but because you love God. That's all it is. Love is the fulfilling of the law. That's what it comes down to. And people may throw out those verses at you. Let's jump to Matthew 22 when it comes to the law. Matthew 22, 34 through 40. And the logical reason, think about this logically, because you can tear apart that whole argument just using Romans 13, 8 through 10. If love is the fulfilling of the law, meaning that if keeping the law out of a loving heart means to love, if we say that the law has been completely nailed to the cross and does not need to be kept, following that to logical conclusion, what can you no longer do?
Love.
You can no longer love. If the law of the 10 commandments have been nailed to the cross and there is no need for you to not commit adultery anymore, to not take God's name in vain, to not do this and this whole thing falls apart. If the law is done away with, so is love, because love is the fulfilling of the law. Not because we want to be saved, but because God is saving us. Does that kind of make sense? And that, an honest heart, just logical reasoning. Otherwise it doesn't make sense. But, some people try to bring up that verse in those verses in Matthew 22, 34 through 40. Can someone read that for us? Matthew 22, 34 through 40.
But when the Pharisees had heard that he had put the Sadducees to silence, they were gathered together. Then one of them, which was a lawyer, asked him a question, tempting him and saying, Master, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love thy Lord thy God. For I say unto you, ye shall not see me henceforth.
Hold on, I think you skipped this.
Page stuff together. All your heart and with all your soul and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it, Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets.
All right, of which Jesus said, they are they which testify of me. Okay, so, and you guys have seen through this before because people point this out. Well, to love the commandments that we have now, the new commandments supposedly, are right here. Jesus gave it himself, Matthew 22.
All the rest don't apply, but yet they believe you shouldn't kill, you shouldn't murder, you shouldn't steal. So.
Right, and I always just like to go back to the fact that here we see that Jesus did differentiate between a relation of a human being to another human being, and he also differentiated that between love of our love towards who? Towards God, right. So if you break this down, one was towards God, and the other one was our relation to man. And just as a reminder, we know that these words that Jesus said right here, what are they? Are they words that he just came up by his own? Or were these words spoken and written before? Just do you remember Jesus here, he's just quoting the Old Testament. So when he's talking about the first commandment, in verse 37, Thou shalt love the Lord God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind, we know that he's quoting Deuteronomy 6, right? Let's go there really quick. And I'm only bringing this out because we all know this, but I think it's a good, thing to just remind ourselves of because this issue will be coming up more than ever, especially in the coming years. Yeah, Deuteronomy 6, 4, and 5. Sorry, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 and 5.
Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy might.
That's right. And that's what Jesus was doing. He was just quoting the law from the Old Testament, from Deuteronomy, that was given to ancient Israel. Clearly, if that was completely done away with, the principles embodied in there, and why would Jesus instruct us to do this? It's pretty straightforward, right? Yeah. And Leviticus 19:18. Again, pretty straightforward.
Thou shalt not avenge nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I am the Lord.
That's right. Again, very, very straightforward. And I was just thinking, when you read through the epistles of John, John over there talks about, and I give you a new commandment that you love one another. And again, people point us to this as the same thing. But in reality, we saw that even the New Testament definition of love is what? Fulfill the law. It's pretty straightforward, All right, let's jump back to Revelation. That's all I just want to mention at this point. They keep the commandments. And what else do they have?
The testimony of Jesus.
The remnant has the testimony of Jesus Christ. Okay, well, what is the testimony of Jesus Christ?
His word.
Some could say the Bible.
We only have one biblical definition, right? Which is where?
In the Bible.
Right? A little bit forward. You remember this, right? Revelation 19. It's when the angel comes up to John and he goes down to tries to worship him, right? And he says a few peculiar words. Verses 9 and 10 of Revelation 19.
And he saith unto me, Right blessed are they which are called unto the marriage supper of the Lamb. And he saith unto me, These are the true sayings of God. And I fell at his feet to worship him. And he said unto me, See thou do it not. I am thy fellow servant and of thy brethren, and have the testimony of Jesus. Worship God. The testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy.
Right. So the testimony of Jesus is clearly the spirit of prophecy. Okay, what does that mean?
Ellen G. White.
Okay, and did we see the spirit of prophecy? Because here's the thing. Because when we refer to the inspired writings, we refer to the writings as the spirit of prophecy. Personally, I do believe that is incorrect. Because we know the spirit of prophecy is the spirit of whom? It's the Holy Spirit, right?
Right.
Was the spirit of prophecy, the spirit of prophesying manifested in the life of Sister White? Yes, we know that was true. We believe that 100%. However, I believe that we've kind of diminished our meaning when it comes to Revelation 12 by thinking that it was revealed in the ministry of Sister White. Boom, that's it.
No, that was supposed to be a daily for each and every one of us.
Right, and I believe that. But the majority presentations use this verse to present that, look, we are the remnant.
It's not a history book.
Yeah. See, I believe we are called to become the remnant. I don't believe we are the remnant yet. The one is mentioned in Revelation 17. We haven't reached that status. To be a part of that group, we have to overcome. And we know this work has been given first and foremost to Adventists through the sanctuary message and three angels' messages, and we're supposed to gather in the flock, but we're not there yet. Even though we use this verse to say, look, see, this is us, this is our denomination. I don't believe this is talking about a denomination, because at the time when this is fulfilled, there isn't going to be a denomination. It's just going to be the 144,000. They will have the testimony of Sister White and everything that went through there, but I do believe 100% that when we look at the spiritual gifts, just as we saw in the life of Jesus, how many of spiritual gifts did Jesus have? When all of them, yeah. After the Holy Spirit fell on him, he was filled, prophesying, teaching, healing. Everything was manifest in the life of Jesus Christ. And what is the 144,000? What is said of them in Revelation 14 in relation to the Lamb?
They follow somewhere.
Yeah, they go through that same experience. So, again, I believe that when it talks about that, them having the testimony of Jesus Christ, which is the spirit of prophecy, I do believe that when the latter rain falls upon those, every single one of those 144,000 individuals, they will possess the spirit of prophecy. They will possess the spirit of teaching. They will possess all the gifts just as Jesus did, which then will enable them to do the work in a manner that will be so striking and startling to Satan and the rest of the world. I don't know what you guys think, but that's how I understand it, And to me, it makes it more personal, than just some individual in recent history that was blessed by the Lord. Well, that's over. We have the testimonies. Okay, let's get on. No, this is supposed to be our experience, all of us. And again, to me, makes it more personal.
If you don't have that experience, I don't know how your faith can stand firm, or how you can stand firm on your faith, because it's that experience that that God is there for you. If you're there for him, he will be there for you.
Right. And when you see himself revealed in your life, or when he reveals the truth, before you in a way that, that you can come, realize this on your own, it strengthens your faith. But yeah, I do genuinely believe that every single one of us, if we overcome, we're going to have the spirit of prophecy. And that's what I'm hoping, to try to get us a little bit more, and seeing Revelation more as a story than just, prophecy. It seems detached. It's all one connected unit. And I do believe that by the time the latter rain falls on us, if we overcome, if I overcome, if you overcome, then we will be able to take literally this entire Bible, and with the aid of the Holy Spirit that is in us, just literally explain everything. Black and white, simple. I mean, I can't wait for that. Because right now you go into the Old Testament, some of the old, prophecies in the smaller books, or even in Zechariah, you're just like, what is that? Okay, any questions? Comments?
So the spirit of prophecy is Christ's plan.
I'm sorry?
That would be Christ's plan. the spirit of prophecy.
Christ's plan.
Right?
Can you elaborate on what you mean by plan?
Well, if he's the spirit of prophecy, then all the predictions, everything was his plan, right?
I think that's ultimately what kind of it boils down to, that we really should be beginning to understand everything in its rightful place as it relates to the great controversy, which includes the prophetic scenarios. It includes particular truths within the Bible when they're supposed to be applied in our lives and the lives of others. But yeah, I think it really incorporates all of God's plan, not just prophecy being a massive part of it, because it builds the structure as to what has happened, what is taking place, and what will happen. So I think you're very much right. Anyone else? You good? Okay, let's move forward. Let's jump to Revelation 13. You know what I'm actually going to do? We were on the last page already, so I'm just... Thanks, Michelle. So it's time for a new board.
A new board is here, right?
Probably just put it on top for now.
I don't have a spare date, I'm sorry.
Oh, a glass? No,
She
that's
took mine from in the car.
all right. I usually have two in the car. I don't think I just
It's
had
on
it.
top, Michelle.
I might have dropped it out there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Or maybe I'll hold it and you can do it. I'm not that strong.
There we go. Okay. Revelation 13. Good chapter. Powerful. Okay, are we all there? All right, let's do what we normally do. Revelation 13. Let's take a few verses each. Go around and could I have you start, please, with Revelation 13 and verse 1? Okay.
Thank you. I'll pass.
That's fine. Butch, can you start,
Thank
please?
you.
Yep. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as if it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wandered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven.
And it was given unto him to make war with his saints, and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints.
What number did you start?
Well,
You're at
you're going
verse
to read
11.
11.
Okay. And I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. And he exercised all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and he makes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose fatal wound was healed. And he performs great signs, so that he even makes fire come down out of heaven to the earth in the presence of men. And he sees those who dwell on the earth, because of the sign which it was given him to perform in the presence of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast, who had the wound of the sword and had come to life. And there was given to him to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast might even speak and cause as many as do not worship the image of the beast to be killed. And he causes all, the small and the great, the rich and the poor, and the free men and the slaves, to be given a mark on their right hand or on their forehead. And he provides that no one should be able to buy or sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is the wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for the number is that of a man, and his number is 666.
Okay. Revelation 13. A lot of speculation, a lot of controversy over the chapter, right?
Yeah.
In the world. Anything that stands out? Apart from, what you're normally used to, because I think all of us have been through this chapter, multiple times. Anything that stands out? Any thoughts?
Well, the first time I seen 18 at the end there, that number is what Solomon used to get in his tribute of gold.
Mm-hmm. Right, 666 talents, right?
Yeah, which is 66 pounds a talent.
Yeah, like 50 or something, which is, again, it's a lot.
Yeah, weird number.
There is a question, because that's the big confusion, right? We have, what is the mark of the beast?
Oh.
Or rather, I should say, is
Forced worship.
Right. But have you guys heard normally that people say, well, the mark of the beast is 666?
You need a record.
Like they kind of use that interchangeably. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
Is the mark of the beast 666? According to these verses.
No.
No, it's not. What is it? According to verse 18.
What is 666?
Number.
It's an identifying, just identifies.
It's the
Right.
number of a man.
Right. It's the number of the beast, the number of a man. So that
So
tells
the
us.
beast is a man, and that man has a number.
Right. But we know, we'll see that it's separate from the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast and 666 are two different things. Right? And whose mark is it, by the way?
Satan's.
Well, it talks about.
You're marked by your disobedience to the civil power, which is given out by the church at that time, or a religious institution. We know who it is. And if you don't
Church and
comply,
state.
you receive. Well, it could have never been done if you're following the monetary game that's going on right now. They're going to do away with cash, and everybody's going to have
Number.
a card. So it's going to be very easy if you do not comply to just shut it off. You go have your cart full of Walmart and say, denied access, you can't buy.
Right.
They want to starve you out, turn it off.
You're
Very
one of,
simple.
one of those people.
Well, they do it to countries already.
But the question is, because there's some new ideas that have been, woven into Adventism and everything. Because we have two beasts, right?
Mhm.
One comes up out of the
See.
sea. The other one comes up out of the earth, right? Out of the earth. So one beast, there's two different beasts.
Yep.
One has the mark, the other one doesn't. And there's been an idea that has been, trickling down into Adventism about the mark. When in relation to the beast, to the two beasts, whose mark is it? The beast from the sea? Is it that beast's mark, or is it the beast from the earth? Is it the mark of the beast from the earth, or is it the mark of the beast from the sea?
See.
Right. Okay.
Peoples.
It's the United States who empowers the first beast.
Okay.
Protestant.
Okay, good.
Protestants.
Good. Just wanted to kind of get that out of the way, because there's some people that keep bringing out this idea, and it's really completely just shifts prophecy over here by saying that the mark of the beast is the mark of the earthly beast,
No.
which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. What about the fire, by the way? We're not going to cover that tonight, but what about the fire?
Fall fire down.
Now, what do you think that would be about?
And what it's saying there, though, is the second beast is able to call fire down.
Mm-hmm.
and do great wonders.
Could be war.
Well, we know that you either have one of two things. Because we know if this is a prophecy, when we're talking about fire coming down from heaven, the fire can be either literal or symbolic, right? So taking those two ways, if
And
it's
Christ or God was the only one that could bring fire down from heaven originally. They all tried.
well,
Yeah,
Call
but
fire
in-
down and light their things, but.
But in Job, the devil called fire down from heaven.
you
and
still have
burned up
Elijah.
His
So
tent or his house where his children were in.
Maybe
No,
Satan's
that's what
counterfeit.
Job said. I'm sorry. I
Right.
said that completely wrong.
Because
That's
if-
what he said. Because that was, he's got me messed up. I can't listen to that man. Oh my goodness, excuse me. No, sorry. The pastor had said that week he preached about Job
Mhm.
that God had called fire down from heaven and burned up the house which Job's children were in, which is not
It's not biblical,
true.
right?
What happened was it was a great wind took the
Mhm.
house down and killed the children, and that was from the devil.
Right.
That wasn't from God. So, excuse me, I had to clear that up.
Well, we know if this is a deception,
You
it
can't
will have
listen
to
to
come
error.
from the
That's a
devil.
problem because it messes up your head.
Very true. Very true. But again, if the fire is a symbol, what would it be a symbol of? We already know.
destruction.
Cleansing, but first and foremost, the fire is a representation of who? Of who?
God.
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 Well,
Who?
Holy Spirit.
The Holy Spirit, right. So if it's symbolic, we're talking about an outpouring of who? Of the Holy Spirit that kind of deceives the world. Or a kind of a spirit, right? Or if it's literal, then we would actually be talking about literal. And think about the spectacle. You know, imagine like these stadiums that they have these massive worship services and, 50, 100,000 people. Imagine one of those. Yeah, we would actually have little fire come down from heaven. Is it beyond Satan's power to do something like that?
No.
No, it's not. And people see with the visual, with the with the five senses, and bam, Satan's got him in the grasp. So we're gonna have to cover that because there's
Or
some
would it
things.
be a nuclear weapon called from a platform up in space to come down and boom, make a fire?
Well, that would destroy the people. And I believe that Satan's purpose here for them is deception rather than utter annihilation for those whom he already has in his grasp. So while it's an idea, I'm not sure if that will happen. Okay, anything else? Because our task is going to be to just kind of look at some of the identifying factors of the sea beast. Again, we've been through this, so I think we need to go too in depth. I kind of just want to really get through this nice and quick and just identify as many characteristics as we can. So
Well, in verse 14, he does miracles.
right, which beast is that though? It's the beast from the earth. Right. Our focus is just the sea beast, the beast from the sea. So how do we tell what this power is? When we look at verse 1, can someone read verse 1 of Revelation 13, please?
And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy.
Okay, so the first thing that we know already is number 1. What kind of a power is this? This is depicted as a
Beast.
A beast that has 7 heads and 10 horns.
Okay, what is a beast again?
Kingdom.
How do we know this?
I forget.
Oh, you remember and you know it. Remember Daniel chapter 7? Let me find here. Look at Daniel 7, verse 17, where it talks about the 4 beasts that come up on the earth in Daniel chapter 7. Daniel 7:17 actually says, these great beasts, which are 4 kings, which shall arise out of the earth. Kings meaning kingdoms, because you cannot have a kingdom without a king, obviously, right? And then verse 23, that kind of takes it apart for us, right? Thus he said, the 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. Right, so a beast, we already know, first and foremost is a kingdom. Now, when we see these beasts, these creatures, are these good beasts or bad? Right, our connotation of a beast, even though I believe in the Greek it just says creature, but our idea of a beast kind of gives it a negative connotation. And we've seen this throughout Daniel and even already in the book of Revelation, that when something is depicted as a beast, what does it usually do in relation to God?
All blasphemy and it oppresses people.
Right, it's an opposition, right? A kingdom. So a beast is a kingdom, but we've already seen that the kingdom that is represented as a beast has always been a system of false worship, right? It is a system of false worship. And as we've seen again, time and time again, with the beasts of Daniel 7, how do these beasts war against God?
Day and night.
Day and night. And how did they do that?
Break his law.
They break his law, and what do they do with those who try to keep?
They kill him.
Kill them.
Right.
Persecute.
Exactly. So it's a system of false worship that brings about persecution. Okay. We've already seen that. How do we know that this system is actually a system of false worship? Because first and foremost, we saw that this is a kingdom. So we know that first and foremost, this is a political power. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a kingdom, right? It is political. However, how do we know that this is actually not just a political power, but a religio-political power?
Blasphemy.
It blasphemies against God, right? Well, we'll say that for a little bit later. But one thing that is even more obvious: what does it try to do with the world?
Always tries to conquer it.
Control, conquer.
What is Satan's ultimate goal?
The worship.
Worship.
Right.
One world government, one world religion.
Right. So if you look at verse 3 and 4, can someone read that for us, please?
3 and 4 what?
Revelation 13.
And 4.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw one of his heads as if it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wandered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast, who is able to make war with him?
Okay. So that right there, from the very fact that this is a beast, which we know is a kingdom, but a kingdom which at the same time demands worship, tells us that this power is both a country and it is both a what? It is both a church. It is both a religion and also a country, a kingdom. Now that in and of itself may already give it away as to who this power is talking about, because currently on this planet there's only one that would actually fit just this description alone. When it appears, where or how does it appear?
Out of the sea.
Right, rises out of the sea. What does that mean?
A lot of people.
Populated area.
Right, remember Revelation 17, which verse is it in there?
It has a lot of people.
Always lose it. For some reason, I can't find it.
It's there.
15.
There
The
we go.
waters.
Yeah, 17:15. For some reason, I was just like, I was going all around it, and it just rises out of the sea. In Revelation 17:15, it tells us that in Bible prophecy, the sea represents a very densely populated area. So it arises, comes out of a densely populated region.
Densely populated.
Now, we've already seen in Daniel 7 that when these beasts are coming up, and we see the great wind upon the great sea, which represents people. What did that represent, that strife upon the great sea in Daniel 7?
Wars, wasn't it?
Right, exactly. It represented warfare. Where there is a lot of people, if someone wants to gain the ascendancy over others, you're going to have conflict, you're going to have warfare, you're going to have bloodshed. This leads us to conclude that even though it's not verbatim stated in here in Revelation 13, this power, because it arises out of a densely populated area, means that most likely, really inevitably, it has to come as a result of war and conflict. Right.
war.
So I'll just say that it appears as a result of war and conflict. Of course, we know that this war and conflict is between nations. Let's see what else. Still in verse 1. Wherever you read, I stood up on the sand of the sea, so a beast rise up out of the sea, having what?
7
7
horns,
heads.
7 heads, 7
7
crowns.
horns,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm. And upon his heads the name of blasphemy, right? Now we're gonna, again, the heads and the crowns, we're gonna cover in depth in Revelation 17, but for the sake of being that what we're seeing John beholding here is this beast, or at least in the first beginning few verses, is this beast is in its stage of one of its heads being the dominant power, you could say, right? So I just want to say that the stage where we are at right now, John is seeing this beast as one of the 7 heads is in dominion. In other words, the power we're talking about is one of 7 main, I would say, powers or kingdoms. Because we saw in Daniel, what does a head represent?
King.
Right, it represents a subdivision of a kingdom, so to speak, a kingdom or a subdivision of a bigger kingdom. And we already saw that in Daniel 7. Remember the leopard beast? How many heads did it have? 4 heads, right? The leopard beast represented which kingdom originally?
Greece.
Greece, right? Ancient Greece that came on the scene as a result of Alexander the Great's warfare. However, the beast is depicted in the beginning with 1 head or all 4? 4. Right, so we can see in Daniel gives us the precedent that even though a beast is depicted, not all of those parts of that beast may exist all at the same time. Because when the leopard beast appears, yes, Alexander the Great comes to ascendancy within the Greek Empire, but then when he comes off the scene, it is divided among the 4 generals. But right from the get-go, right from the very beginning, the beast is depicted as having 4 heads. But it is not entirely chronological, you understand?
4 stages.
Right. The 4 stages of the Greek Empire comes after, which means that the beast exists sometime, and those heads are not applicable until after Alexander the Great comes off the scene. So I want you to understand that here, even though we're seeing 7 heads, all 7 do not exist at the same time. We've seen that in the book of Daniel. I think that is very, very important. It is one of the 7 main powers or kingdoms. Again, this being part of a greater beast, what does this beast do? What do these kingdoms do, every single one of them?
They come and go.
They come and go, but in relation to this conflict,
They persecute people.
right, it is one of the 7 main powers kingdoms, I will say, which oppose God, just to put it simply. And again, I'm going to write this down just for the sake of our study in Revelation 13, but we're going to come back to this in Revelation 17. But if we were to break this down, according to the book of Daniel, what was the first kingdom?
Babylon.
Right. The first kingdom was ancient Babylon.
That's right.
Next one was actually first. Let's
Medes and Persians.
right. Medes and Persians, the Medo-Persian Empire. But before we go further, let's mention what was the thing that Babylon was known for?
Babylon.
It's wonders. The hanging gardens.
Its wonders, okay. So that beauty
Excess and
eventually becomes what to you?
Corruption.
It corrupts you. But those things, think about what happened with Satan because of his beauty. Who became his number 1 guy? Himself. He became his own.
You're not, when you're in that type of situation or lifestyle, you're not relying on God. You have everything. You didn't have no need for God.
Right. So you become your own
God.
Your own God and your own. I'm looking for a specific word that starts with an I.
Savior. Oh,
Idol.
Your own idol, right? That's what Babylon was known for. The idol worship, bringing up idols. Now think about this, because we're going to bring this all together, how this beast really is a composite of all these parts of these other kingdoms. Because when you break this down and you go through these kingdoms, Babel, and you have idol worship, we know that very soon there's going to be an idol that will be set up.
Is Babylon also IDLE, where the people very idle? Similar to what's happened today in this country.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that don't do nothing, and when you start to be idle, what happens to
Get into trouble.
you?
Yeah, corruption sets in. So Babylon, there's going to be idol worship in the past, and we know that this is going to be repeated in the future, where certain truths of the Bible are going to be subverted, and an idol type of worship, false system of worship, is going to be presented. We know this to be the Sunday Sabbath issue, right? What about the Medo-Persians? From the book of Daniel, what is the one thing that stands out about the Medo-Persian Empire?
It wasn't as superior as Babylon, but it was the next best.
Right. But I'm talking about in relation to ideas when it comes to worship. Even though you're right, it was a slightly inferior kingdom depicted by the silver. But from Daniel, what was the one thing? What happened in Daniel with Medo-Persians?
How they took over, you mean?
They took over, right? And once they took over, Daniel was still on the scene, right? Do you remember Darius?
Yeah, they went under the gate.
Mm-hmm. But what happened with Daniel in relation to the Medo-Persian
Oh, he
kingdom?
kept
He
them.
stayed.
Yeah.
He stayed, and then what happened to him? There were some nice guys that didn't like
They're
him too
still
much.
trying to
Oh
get rid
yeah,
of
the
them.
alliance.
Mhm.
thing.
He still
They ratcheted
prayed.
up to-
Right. Those bad men, those bad advisors in the court of the king, they advised the king to pass what kind of a law?
Death decree.
Worship him.
Right. A law regarding worship. Could that law be changed?
No.
No.
Right. So it was specifically known for laws which could not be
Yeah, they're called
abrogated.
mandates.
Is that the right word? Abrogated?
Did you keep?
No, there's a word I'm looking for.
I don't know.
Absolved.
Yeah, let's use that one.
I don't like that word though.
I don't either.
Sorry.
That's all I can
The
think of.
priests say it every time. I absolve you of all your sins.
I know, that's all I
So
can think of.
laws.
I never had any Catholic background.
That's why I don't like that word. Woo!
And these laws are based on worship. All right, next you guys already said that we had the Greek Empire, Greece.
Mm-hmm.
We know another word I don't like, absolute. That's like absolve and absolute.
Yeah.
I don't like that
Yeah.
word either.
Constantine enforced. Didn't he enforce Sunday worship?
You're thinking of
That's
Rome,
Rome.
right?
Oh,
It's much later.
Greece.
What about Greece? What do you need to know?
What is the one thing that would stand out about the Greek
Speed.
Empire?
Speed.
Speed with which it conquered. Okay, well, that could have some connotation as to maybe those 3.5 years where Satan knows that he has a short time. But I'm looking more specific, a little bit along the lines of how this false system of worship came to be ingrained in the minds and the intellect of the people.
Well, the Greeks worship all these pantheons.
Weren't they big philosophers
Yeah.
and just
Right? What does the Bible say?
they were higher learning, but they were
Right, they were intellectuals.
yeah.
But the intellectuality or the intellect that was employed, where did it come from? Who did it originate
Not
with?
from God.
Right, it wasn't.
Pagan.
Right, it was basically humanism. Us humans, we can solve our own problems. Let's figure this out. That's really what it is. And that's what we have today. Our philosophy, our mentality, our mindset really comes from the Greeks.
Yep.
And that's what the Bible says, right? Be wary lest anyone spoil and deceive you through vain philosophy, right? The philosophy of men.
And look at what's still predominant in the education and public education. They still have that.
That's
filthy
why-
classes.
When you vote, you gotta look at their philosophy, what they
Right.
follow.
Right, so I'll put that in there.
Sophistry. Philosophy.
That's a good word, sophistry. Yeah, philosophy and mentality, which I guess it touches upon education. Okay, next one was, of course, pagan Rome, right?
Yes, the copiers
Mm-hmm.
copied the Greeks.
That's right. Yeah, that's what we refer to it still as the Greco-Roman culture, because the Romans adopted pretty much everything from the
Just
Greeks.
change the names of the gods.
Hmm. So what would stand out about pagan Rome? Imperial Rome.
Laws. Right?
Okay, they did have laws. They could be changed, so they weren't perhaps as stringent as the Medo-Persians. What is the one thing in Daniel 7 that is mentioned about this fourth beast? It is what? It's dreadful and
Fierce.
terrible, and it breaks everything in
Yeah.
pieces, right?
Rhymes it up.
Conqueror.
Mhm.
They perfected killing and
Marching,
torture.
yeah.
Right. So how would we put that for pagan
They were
Rome?
great intimidators.
Mhm.
Feel like a lawnmower.
Yeah, chop it up so there's nothing left.
Yeah,
Mulching them.
mulchers.
I would say that pagan Rome was really known for domination and control by force. It was its strength, its power that really gave its size, by force and strength.
Well, it's taxation.
And what do we have now?
Oh, we are based on pagan Rome.
Mhm.
In some ways, we're worse.
Okay, next one we know was papal Rome, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Babylon,
Right.
Medo-Persia, Greece, pagan Rome, papal Rome. Papal Rome, what did it do specifically? The one thing that stood out, what did it do with church and state?
They combined.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
He was able to influence the state to carry out its agenda.
yeah. Joined in 476.
That's the stage we're at right now.
Yeah,
Right, so papal Rome was known for mixing church and state in order to pass laws that would bring about persecution for those who didn't go along. And the next one we're going to cover in Revelation 17,
made everyone drunk.
the sixth power.
USA.
Yep, the USA. And the seventh power, I'll just put it. That New World Order, as people call it, that final stage of the dominion of the little horn power of this religious political system.
Yeah,
However, in Revelation 17, we'll find that there isn't just seven. There is also an eighth king,
the green giant.
right? And that's what we'll have to talk about what that is, because apparently we know that when this global system is now set up, what's the next thing that happens? Is there going to be another one? No, because who appears shortly thereafter?
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. Yeah, we go to heaven, 1,000 years take place, and then we're going to have to talk about the final, I guess you could say, conglomerate of all of this, which is really an eighth king as depicted in Revelation 17, but that's for a whole other time. So it is one of the seven main powers kingdoms which oppose God. I want you guys to notice this, because if you take these first four beasts that we saw back in Daniel, and you look at this power, when you look at verse 2, can someone read that verse, please?
And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority.
Which they like to do. They give it all to some king to do their dirty work.
Right, so I'll put number 5, that this power has the characteristics of the first four beasts of Daniel 7. When we look at it, this apparently
incorporates some of each.
Right. This power is just a conglomerate of the mentality, the system, the political structure, the religious structure of those four powers. So it incorporates I would say, mentality, politics, education.
It's a refinement.
I would say also religion, etc., into itself.
Slavery.
One conglomerate
be slavery without the majority knowing they're enslaved.
Yeah, that's what it is.
That's what we have today.
It's going to end up that way they're going.
So we see that it is one of the 7 main kingdoms which oppose God throughout time. At the time that we are seeing these verses, we are seeing John depicting it at the time of papal Rome, as we'll see. The time when the deadly wound was about to be given. But look at these 4 kingdoms. Because when we see all of this, the later verses being fulfilled, the world finally going 100% after the beast, continuing for 42 months, breaking out the persecution upon us, what happened with these 4 is really the exact same thing that is going to happen now. You're going to have a system that is going to bring in idol worship. It's going to set up an idol Sabbath in place of the true one to get people to bow down to it. We know that this is really just an intricate form of sun worship. Look at the Medo-Persians using that false idol Sabbath. It's going to pass laws of men. Mankind, the governments are going to pass laws which cannot be absolved, which are based on worship in relation to how we worship, how we conduct ourselves in relation to our God and our Savior. The Greeks, in order to sell this idea to the people, what's going to be employed is human philosophy. They're rationalizing their ideas. Humanism, that look, this is for the greater good. Look at the great things that we're going to do along with this, all these great laws that's going to promote morality. You understand what I'm saying? They're going to try to
Re-educate and train you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it is, through human wisdom, not godly wisdom, but human wisdom, in order to sell this false idol. And then you have pagan Rome. They're going to do this again through the people and through the power of the state. That the pressure is going to be so much that it's going to be again just like that power, grinding in pieces, stamping the residue with their feet. That's how intense the persecution is going to be in order to bring about this false Sabbath. And that's kind of when you look at the first 4 characteristics. There's more to it.
Happening today.
It's all laid out.
That's right.
It's all set up.
That's right.
Georgetown do it.
Okay.
Look at what they're doing to them countries over by you.
Yeah, I was
They're
actually.
grinding them people.
There are thousands of
You're going to comply or you're going to die.
Yep.
And they're just rip-shotting over there.
I actually just read about it earlier today that, there's talk in Russia about, extending their territories to Finland and also parts of Poland, which I found interesting, but we know it's all a big game anyways, though it's hard to figure out exactly what the purpose is in all of it,
vying for.
Okay. Have we done this in Daniel? We took a look at, right, how Babylon or the geographical locations of all these beasts, how you progress from time when you get from Babylon to Medo-Persians, and you get to Greece. Geographically, where are we traveling?
Further south. Right.
Not quite south, but you're going, Babylon, then you had Medo-Persia, which stretched up and above. Well, it was actually really kind of in the same spot, but by the time you get to Greece,
West.
you're going west, right? When you get to pagan Rome, you're going further west. By the time you get to papal Rome, you're where? You're still in the west. By the time we get to Earth Beast, the U.S. and the United States of America, again, you're still going further and further west. We good so far? Okay. Let me see here.
Further west, further away from the Garden of Eden.
Interesting.
The west where the
Interesting
end
connection. I like that.
Right, the west is where the end is, right?
That's right.
China's further west, yeah.
Buck stops here.
That's right. Okay. What else? What else can you tell me? Just based on verses, the first several verses, you could say. Its location geographically. Is there any way for us to find out as to where its geographical location is?
7 hills, right? That the woman sits.
Yep. Well, we can't use that until Revelation 17,
I was
right?
going to say it's not here.
Is it? Look at verse 2. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the who?
Dragon.
The dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority.
So we know wherever that great seat of power and authority is, that is the location, and we all know who that is and where that is. But convince somebody by reading that.
Right, we do know, right? But who's the dragon?
Satan.
We know that ultimately it is Satan.
And
Just
he
as
works through people.
Right, so it is a dual representation. Ultimately it represents Satan as he works through a particular
Man, or
a particular government, a particular system upon the earth. We saw, didn't we see this in Revelation 12? Remember Revelation 12, let's see here. Where's the dragon? Okay, here we go. We're looking at verses 3 and 4. It introduces the actual dragon and the great dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, etc., etc. And the dragon stood, I'm looking at verse 4, and the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered for to devour her child as soon as it was born. And we mentioned that this was in reference to who at the time of Jesus? Herod, right? Herod tried to take Jesus' life at infancy, and that is what represented in this instance, in that verse, the dragon. It represented Satan, how he worked through the civil power, the political power, in order to persecute God's people. So here, when we have this power that is to persecute God's people also, the dragon gives us its seat authority. We know ultimately it is Satan, but it is Satan working through which power?
The land beast.
A little bit later, right? But in this instance right here in verse 2, the land beast is not on the scene yet. So
sea beast.
Yeah, it's the sea beast arising, but when it arises, when did it arise? Technically, we use what year?
476, right?
330.
Well, we use 476 because that's when the Roman Empire, the pagan Rome was broken up. The imperial Rome divided into 10. But we know that the new power, papal Rome, did not fully begin to exist as a religious political power until what year? 538.
Oh,
Right?
538.
You remember with Justinian, all the decrees, the Council of Laodicea, etc., etc. At that time, if you remember, just a few years back, in 533, what did Justinian declare the Pope in the West? The head of all the churches, right? The moral leader of all the world. And we know that when 330, when Constantine left Rome and changed the capital of imperial Rome to Constantinople, who did he leave in charge? He left the Bishop of Rome at that time as the leader of the Western Roman Empire, in essence. So who was it that gave the power, seat, and authority, its place to exist? Right. The dragon here in this instance, even though, yes, ultimately represents Satan, it represents the Roman Empire through which he worked, just as it was the case in Revelation 12:4. Right? So power, authority given by, I will say, imperial Rome. And we'll mention just the dates 330 with Constantine and 538 with Justinian.
And Constantine's mother.
As Michael Rood put it very well, she may have been the worst archaeologist ever.
Yes.
Okay, so the very fact that its power, seat, and authority is given to it by imperial Rome tells us that its location has to be connected to which part of this world?
Rome.
Europe.
Wherever Rome.
Which part of Europe?
Italy.
Right, Western Europe in essence, right? So number 7, you could say that it's connected or directly connected to Western Europe.
Directly to Western Europe.
And even the very name, right? Because we already know what this power is. The very name, the Roman Catholic Church, gives credence to that it is in fact a Roman power. Okay, connected directly to the Western Europe. What else? Because it is in Western Europe, what does it do there? Or at least at this stage, because we're talking about the Dark Ages still, right? Verses 1 and 2 when it arises, we're talking about 538 progressing through the Dark Ages up until the deadly wound. So because it is in Western Europe, what kind of a relationship does it have with those around it?
Control.
How do we know this?
Got all the kings bowing down to him.
Okay, and we see this in Revelation 13, right?
And they worship the dragon. They who
Mm-hmm.
must have been the leaders of the area.
The 10 nations, the 10 Aryan tribes.
That's right. So the dragon gives him his seat, his power, and great authority. And here we see that that's exactly what happened, that this power and authority was exercised over the powers of Western Europe, where at this point in time, we know that it wasn't the entire world, it was the entire, you could say, known world at that time that was wandering after the beast, but its full, complete fulfillment has not taken place. We're about to see that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's connected directly to Western Europe. I'll just say that according to Revelation 13, all pay homage to him. And we saw in medieval times there was virtually no nation, no kingdom at that time in Europe which was not subservient to the Pope. Whatever the Pope said.
Look
What?
now. I mean, how many presidents or heads of
Oh, yeah,
nations
they run it.
bow
Yeah.
to him and kiss his feet and everything?
Go in
Mhm.
the garden.
Now he's going to come to the lower ones. Speak before Congress.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
And
going to come
he
out in
wins.
September.
Yeah, and you know,
Yeah.
they said his agenda is on global warming. So
Oh,
he's the
that's
green giant. He's on to be on global warming
And
agenda.
we know that's going to be used to promote
Yeah.
false system of worship, the false day. Okay. So connecting it to this, because it has control, in the medieval times, it had control over all of Western Europe. When we get to the very, very end, how much of the world wanders after it?
All.
Oh.
Right. Eventually, all the world gives it worship.
And then they're going to give it its power.
Right. They're the ones that are going to support the system until they realize that what?
They've been duped.
It's the wrong
Mhm.
one.
Right, but unfortunately at that time,
Too late.
it's too late, right? Probation has closed.
That is so sad.
Oh,
We gotta get busy.
tragedy.
Yeah, seriously, all of us. So let me just mention this. Eventually, all the world gives it worship service, which means that it is not just a power that is located in Western Europe. It becomes what kind of a power?
World.
Right, worldwide power. So, I mean, so far, you have a
The
clear
sad
mind.
part about it is who empowers them? Those that knew better. The
Mhm.
Protestants are the ones that empower him. And
That's
then
right.
all the Protestants knew who the beast was to begin with. How did they forget?
Forgot.
They were infiltrated.
And they didn't study
They're
this.
in with it.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
And then they started reading as many different versions of the Bible as they could.
They want to believe that all roads go to heaven. They want to believe it.
And everybody will be saved.
Yep.
It's more
Yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah, it doesn't break you out of your comfort zone. Oh, I can keep going with this. Eventually, I'll get to it. So we have a beast system, a religio-political power. English language is crazy sometimes. Oh.
Yeah.
So it is a power that is both a country and also a religion. It is a country or a power that rises out of conflict in a place that is greatly and densely populated. It is one of the 7 main powers that has existed through time, which opposes God. First being Babylon, Medo Persia, Greece, pagan Rome, and then we know this part of its dominion is papal Rome. It has characteristics of the first 4 beasts of Daniel, meaning it incorporates that idol worship, the philosophy, the political, religious structure, everything. Its power and seated authority. It rose on the scene really as a power because of Imperial Rome. It was Imperial Rome that gave it its power, its authority, its ability to execute itself around the areas around Rome.
I guess there was no other way for that to be instituted except through that.
Mm-hmm. Right, because if you think about it, the world power at that time, the leading man tells you, look, this guy's in charge. What are you going to say? not going to say much. You're just going to go along with it, regardless of whether that person is good or bad. That's the kind of fear that was instilled in there. So power, seat, authority given by pagan Rome. It is connected directly to Western Europe because exactly that's where the seat of imperial Rome was. And we know that it is a worldwide power because eventually all the world gives it worship and service. What else? What else did we mention in verse 1? What does it do?
The name of blasphemy.
What is blasphemy?
But say you're God.
Saying,
Okay, so it claims,
to be.
right, to have the power to, and I just wrote those verses, yeah, John 32, to forgive sins. Claims to
Represent or be God.
Okay, so it claims to have the power to forgive sins through the ministry of its priests. And at the same time, it claims to, as we'll mention it a little bit more specific, claims to be able to represent Jesus Christ on earth. In other words, to be a substitute in a matter of speaking, or have its priests, or at least the highest priest, to claim that he is Jesus Christ on earth. He is the vicar of Christ.
Representative of Jesus Christ.
Right, and we'll take a look at that a little bit more next week. It blasphemes.
Well, that's the claim that they killed Christ for.
I'm sorry, come again?
That's the claim they killed Christ for. The title of
And that's right.
blasphemer.
That's right. It's interesting how that's going to reciprocal around. Okay, as it blasphemes God, we know the one thing, the way that it warred in the Dark Ages against God is, of course, by doing what? With his people.
The saints.
Yeah, persecutes the saints using the civil power.
It's amazing. You think of how less populated Europe was at the time, and to what lengths they would go to hunt these people down. You would think that, don't worry about it. I mean, they went, look at the Waldenses, chased them into the remotes of the remotes to get them.
Yeah, they got him too.
You would think, just leave them people alone.
Yeah, to me, it's horrendous when you read some of those stories. Yeah, when they put drove so many thousands of them into a cave, and then smoked
It
them
wasn't
out.
like they could fly a helicopter there. I mean, these guys had to horseback and walk, and you would think
those mountains.
it wasn't worth it. But how much unbelievable hatred towards.
And that's right. Yeah, the kind of determination that keeps you going. You have to chase that person mile after mile after mile. Just
Relentless.
Yeah, over the fact that they have a different idea than you do.
That's how much Satan hates God.
Yeah, and I think we haven't seen it fully. I think we're about to see it even more. So it persecutes the saints using the civil power. Let's jump down to verse 3. We saw it's already on the scene. This is already past 538. It's already up on the global playground, you could say. Verse 3, please.
And I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast.
Okay, so at some point in time, he receives a wound. Right, a deadly wound. Right, we know that this refers to when?
1798.
And again, we've been through this. Receives a deadly wound. And historians, we know at that time, and I don't have the quote for this, but they wrote specifically that it seemed like the papacy will never recover. It seemed fatal. A deadly wound in 1798. What happens to it?
Cooked itself right back in.
The wound is eventually healed. Now, again, in our presentations as Adventists, we like to point to which date as far as the healing.
26.
1929, right, with the
29.
Lateran Treaty.
I thought it was 29.
And we normally mention that, well, look, 1798, Pope's taken hostage, papacy receives that wound. It seems like it wouldn't recover. Then even in 1870, Victor Emmanuel III takes away the papal states, and the Pope literally is just a prisoner in his home for the next 50 years. So it wasn't until 1929 when you have the Concordat, or the Latin Treaty, and the Concordat written between who? It was between the Pope? Right, it was between him and Italy. Now, my question is, we already know this, but we haven't studied it in our study yet. But who heals the wound of this sea beast? Which power? Which power gives that authority back to it?
Knowing what we're knowing, it had something to do with the United States.
Right. We know that it is the earth beast in Revelation 13 that returns all the previous power that the sea beast had back into its hands, so that it can use the governments and the civil powers of the world at its whim. Right? That's what the Bible tells us. In 1929, it was Italy that was giving a small part of the power back to the Vatican, back to the papacy. But it wasn't a full healing because that process had just begun. Right? The papacy at that time, the Vatican, was first just recognized as a state, as an actual country once again. So that process began in 1929, but is it done yet? Is the wound fully healed?
What treaty was that?
The Lateran Treaty.
How do
Won't be
you spell
fully
that?
healed until
L-A-T-E.
L-I-T-E.
Yeah, Lateran, Lateran Treaty of 1929.
Which was really an illegal treaty. But they never rectified it.
Still on the books.
Yeah.
So the wound is eventually healed.
Well, that's how all these things get passed.
Well, Hitler still has laws on the books. Germany.
Okay, so I mentioned that it started with the Lateran Treaty of 1929. When will that wound finally be healed?
when the United States or Protestantism
Joins hands, right?
gives back the power to the first beast and says, that's what I believe now.
Now, at which point? Because, you could be referring to the time when the Mark of the Beast laws are first passed, when the National Assembly laws passed, which will be day one, remember? But at day one, is all the power that the Roman Catholic Church had at the Dark Ages already returned to it? No.
No, it's when it gets that stage of being able to persecute.
Not just persecute, but literally execute. Right? Which we know as we study, this doesn't happen until that first death decree is enforced, which is day 1290. Right? So I'll just say that it's the enforcement of first death decree, which again is day 1290.
Wouldn't be just the Sunday law, but it's the Sunday law amend the death decree.
Well, the Sunday law is what starts the count, the taking away of the daily. Then you have 1260 days, 3.5 years until the death decree is passed because of everything that has been happening and the people.
And then 30 days until it's
enforced.
Well, there were Adventists on chain gangs in the 19th century for Sunday laws.
Yeah, I never read about
It's
that.
in Ellen White's writings. They were
Is that
Adventists.
live sketches or?
Yeah, it could be like sketches.
So I never read live sketches actually.
I'll bring it to you.
Thanks, appreciate it.
And well, it said they wrote their Adventists at certain time with chains, chain gang, for blue law.
And those things are still in the books too.
Yep.
Now here's something that's very curious, because we know that before the death decree is enacted, it actually mentions. Can someone read verse 5 for us?
And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months.
Okay. How long?
42 months.
All right. Now we've always understood this to be a reference to which period of time? Right. 530. The historical 1260. The historical 42 months, which means the 1260 years from 538 to 1798. But the first thing that startled me is when I started studying the book of Revelation is there's a specific word there in verse 5. And it says, and power was given unto him to continue 40 and 2 months. Now remember, we're speaking of that part of the beast at the time where the wounded head is. It heals. Because my question is, if this 42 months is a reference to 538, when the Roman Catholic Church appeared on the scene as a religious and a political power, would it have been true of the Bible to refer to it as having continued for 42 months?
No.
Because what does continue mean? It means you were doing it before, you had paused for whatever reason, now you're going to, you resume, you pick back up. So what is this talking about? The first or the second stage of dominion of, it's the second. The deadly wound is healed, and I know that the wording, because in verse 3 it talks about it being healed, the world wandering after the beast, and then verse 5 just gives additional info. As the world is wandering after the beast, it is because it is able to execute its power for 42 months in persecution, which then culminates in the world gathering together and passing and enforcing the death decree. So verse 13 is, I'll say, continues for 42 months after the wound is healed. And notice how this ties in perfectly what we studied in Revelation chapter 11. Remember with that group that was still stuck in the court? But the Revelation 11:2, but the court which is without the temple, leave out a measure, not for it is given unto the Gentiles. And the holy city shall they tread underfoot 40 and 2 months. So that persecution takes place for 3.5 years. The tug of war in the minds and hearts of those that could be rescued from the snares of Satan. After which the world jumps 100% on board. They pass the death decree, they enforce it, and this happens right after the 42 months after the wound is healed. So I'll just mention that this is the second stage of dominion for the Roman Catholic system, Roman Catholic Church. And to conclude, let's just put down that eventually it regains full and complete control of the world. I would have liked to have gotten to the number 666, because we're going to talk about the fact that even though this is a beast, it is a political system, rather, I should say. We read at the end of Revelation 13 that the number 666 is the number of who? A man. Which tells us that even though this is a system, it has one central figure at the very top, which also claims to be able to forgive sins, who claims to be Jesus Christ on earth. And his claims of that are directly tied into this number 666. So if you guys, I want to give you guys homework. Because I do this with a few people on the internet, and they never really get it, because I try to give you like directions. Find it yourself. And when you stumble upon it without someone explaining it to you, blah, 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 this is how it is. When you discover it, it's like, whoa, I love it. So the homework is this. The number 666. We're going to cover a little bit next week, the Vicarious Filidae, Latinos, Italica Ecclesia, all the Latin names and everything with the Roman numerals. But we need to talk about where did number 666 come from? The origins. Where did it appear on the scene? Like where is this coming from? So my question to you is this. Because remember, everything that we are studying in the book of Revelation and Daniel is in light of which message?
Third angel.
3 angels, but the 3 angels' messages are incorporated into a bigger message, which is the
Salvation.
Sanctuary. There we go. The sanctuary message. That's what we've been looking at, Daniel and Revelation, in light of the sanctuary in light of the battle between good and evil. But our focus has been the sanctuary. And we already did this in Daniel. Remember, every single bit of truth that God has, Satan perverts. But as we saw, every single perversion of truth is a perversion of a part of what? Of the sanctuary. Now, I wanna give you a clue that 666, the origins of where it comes from, is another perversion of the sanctuary that we are very scarcely aware of. I actually don't know how I came upon this. It's just one day I just kind of knew this, it just makes perfect sense. But the homework is this. Go back into the first 5 books of Moses, and I'll make it easier for you. Go back into the book of Leviticus. The book of Leviticus, and search through the book of Leviticus to find any kind of relation to the number 666 or something having to do with sixes. That's all I'm going to say.
Really?
That kind of gives it away too much. And once we see where this came from, we will be better to understand why the number 666 is attached to this person and to the system. But it is a perversion of the sanctuary. It's, even though it's a perversion, seeing exactly where it came from, I think it's a profound truth. So check it out, Leviticus. Go through it. I hope you can find it. If not,
What book? Leviticus?
Leviticus, just
Chapter?
I'm not going to give you the chapter. I can't make it too easy. That's
You're not
right.
gonna make it easy, are you?
Nope,
No.
nope, not this time. I mean, come on, we read so little of this, enough as it is.
Right.
We could take a week and just read one book. There's not that many chapters in there. But we'll pick this up next week. We'll mention some other things about the sea beast, then we'll go into the earth beast, and then we'll tie it all in together. So we'll probably spend 2 more weeks in here. No more than that.
Well, that 1929 date, a lot of crazy things happened.
Yeah.
What happened with the German economy? What happened to the American economy? It's funny. I want
And
you
what's
wonder.
going to happen
You know
soon?
why that happened?
Yeah, the
When
When you
bankers.
take your allegiance and you go in error, there's usually consequences.
But who pulled the
The United
strings?
States knew better.
Who pulled the strings on all of it?
Who always does pull the strings?
All roads lead to?
Rome.
That's right. That's right. That's what we're saying today. How you doing, Zach?
All right, not too bad.
Is that?
Good. We're good. So what are we to do, saints?
Depart from sin.
That's right. We've got to overcome. We've got to search out our lives. I got to search out mine. Every single bit. Because like you said, time is too short. We just keep I know I keep getting distracted.
That's Satan is very accomplished at that in this time period.
Right. Yeah, after 6,000 years with all the tools he's got and everything, especially for us young people. I know you guys have been through it, but now I feel that there's just compared to, just even 20 years ago, the amount of distractions.
Worse every day.
Yeah.
For everybody.
Yeah, the gadgets and everything. It's mind-boggling.
Makes
It's
time
too
fly.
much.
Yeah. So let's remember Philippians 4:8. Whatsoever things are pure, holy, true, just, good.
Think
I'm
of
the
these things.
That's right. Any other questions, comments? So we'll pick this up next week. Okay.